When you are constantly comparing yourself to other people, if you are not careful, it's going to consume you, and it's going to produce something that you probably did not even envision. You're going to end up doing something that you probably in your wildest dreams never thought you would ever do. When you are rock solid in your worth as a person, when you are focused on where you are going, when you understand that it is your lane, your story, your journey, when you understand that God's plans for you are specifically tailored to you, another person's success doesn't mean that you have failed. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Life Lessons with Law. My name is Loretta Gerard, and you already know that on this space we like to have open, honest, authentic, heart-to-heart conversations on everything pertaining to love, life, faith, and womanhood. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast or your first time watching on YouTube, you are most welcome. Thank you for choosing to hang out with me today. As you can see, I've got this look of excitement on my face, and that's because it feels so good to be back. I have been MIA for a bit. I have been, life has been lifing, and I have had to take some time off and to focus on other things. I have been working on getting my second master's degree, so trying to wrap that up, fingers crossed. And so I just had to take some time off to just focus on that. It's interesting how sometimes life shows us just how finite our energy is and just how limited we are in capacity, because you just cannot handle everything at the same time. And it's just a way, I think it's just life's way of reminding us that you're a human being. And I really tried combining full-time work and getting another master's degree and also being a wife and also doing this podcast. And it was hellish. It was chaotic. And I found myself spiraling, burnt out. So I just had to, something just had to go. And then I just felt, okay, you know what? I'm just going to put the podcast aside, focus on my degree. And yeah, but good to be back. Good to be back. I feel so like this is so exhilarating because this is something that I absolutely love. Sitting here on this couch, looking all pretty, and having this conversation with you guys fills my heart with so much joy. And I feel so honored and so privileged that I get to do this. So thank you again for hanging out with me. So today we are talking about the comparison trap. The comparison trap. And comparison is such an interesting topic because it's something people talk about all the time. How many times have you heard people say stuff like, stop comparing yourself to others, you're not like everyone, stop comparing yourself. And that's good advice, not saying that's bad advice. That's really good advice. It's important that we do for the sake of our well-being and, for the sake of our sanity. But I was just thinking about it, like, how do we first of all, recognize some of these pitfalls when it comes to comparison? How do we manage it? Because believe it or not, comparison is just part of life. It's just part of how we operate as human beings. It's just something that our brain kind of like defaults to. So the question is, how do we recognize when we're falling into this pattern of constant comparison? Is there a good way, a better way to compare? And overall, how do we train ourselves to compare less? And that's what I want to talk about today. Just chit-chatting about it and sharing some of my thoughts about it. Look, this is just a very informal conversation. I feel like I need to put that caveat out there. I don't have like an outline or anything. This is just me coming to talk. So forgive me if everything kind of seems like all over the place and doesn't seem to have some kind of order or structure to it. I'm just here because I have missed doing this, missed chatting with you guys. And I just want to talk about something that I think is prevalent, something I think is important. And I want to do it in the most natural and comfortable and, just relaxed way. So forgive me if this is just not hitting all the marks when it comes to how a podcast should be structured. But anyway, before I dive in, if you're watching this on YouTube and you have not subscribed to the channel, all right, ngwanu, quickly slash that subscribe button, like this video, and of course leave your comments, your thoughts as we go into the conversation. Look, I like to have intellectually stimulating conversations. I'm open to dissent. It's okay to disagree. It's okay if you don't agree with some of the points that I share or that I'll be sharing. It's okay, but just make sure that when you disagree that you do it with utmost civility and respect, because otherwise you gonna get anyway. But yeah, this is a very safe community, and I'm trying to build a safe community where people are mature to have conversations even when they disagree, and they do it intelligibly. I mean, they do it with respect and civility. So yeah, so this is what we do over here. Anyway, so comparison. You know how they say that comparison is a thief of joy? Absolutely correct. And I always say that comparison is not just a thief of joy, it is a crusher of your self-esteem. And look, listen, your brain does this thing where it constantly ranks stuff, and comparing yourself to others is just one of the things like the brain does, right? But I've come to learn that the fact that we repeatedly do something doesn't mean that we're not able to train ourselves to do differently. We're able to train our brains to not revert to the default way of thinking, or not revert to the default way of doing things. So comparison is that thing that if you allow it, it's going to fester. Comparison is so dangerous that it eats away your time, and it chips away at your self-esteem. What do I mean? When you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, you realize that it's never going to be enough. You are never going to feel like you are doing enough. Because the reality of the fact is that there are so many people in the world who are doing better than you in some way, in some shape or form, or in some level, or in some capacity. There will always be people who are doing better than you. There will always be people who will have something that you don't have. Just in the same way that there are some people who you're probably doing better than, and there are some things that you have that other people do not have. When you recognize this, it helps you, just realize that the best thing to do is just focus on yourself and focus on your journey. Now, one of the things that there are a number of things that comparison produces. The first is an emotion called jealousy. Jealousy it's a negative emotion, and we do have negative emotions from time to time. But if you allow it fester, it could be destructive. So when you are constantly comparing yourself to other people, you will begin to feel this angst and this envy, this jealousy towards them. It gives rise to this feeling of bitterness about yourself, your life, your life circumstances, and a feeling of envy towards the other person who seems to be doing better than you. And jealousy doesn't produce anything good. If you allow jealousy to take root in your life, it becomes a catastrophe. It could create a catastrophe in your life. I mean, look at the Bible, in the story of Cain and Abel. Cain killed his brother, his own flesh and blood. The very first record of murder in the Bible was as a result of unresolved jealousy. Cain murdered his brother in cold blood because God accepted the sacrifice of his brother. Now, was Cain wrong to have felt jealous for his brother? Maybe not. Maybe he felt what any human being would feel, right? Jealousy and this feeling of, oh, so mine is not good enough, is a natural human response to, rejection. It is what you do with that emotion that matters. The next step you take to that feeling is what matters, right? So maybe what Cain could have done was to go to God to say, oh, why didn't you take why didn't you accept my sacrifice, or why didn't you accept my offering, and just lay that feeling before God and let God deal with that feeling. But he decided to go the other way. He let that jealousy, he let that envy consume him. And this is what comparison does. When you are constantly comparing yourself to other people, if you are not careful, it's going to consume you, and it's going to produce something that you probably did not even envision. You're going to end up doing something that you probably in your wildest dreams never thought you would ever do to someone. Look, every human being is capable of doing notorious things. Trust me. It's an animalistic tendency that we've got, right? That's why we need to constantly work on ourselves. And if you're a Christian, you need to constantly ensure that you are watered by the word of God so that you can produce the fruits of the Spirit, because otherwise you will pander to those animalistic tendencies that you have got. And when you begin to produce the fruit, you will be surprised. The things that are coming out of you. I remember I saw something on, and this is a very good segue to throw this in because I've been meaning to talk about this. but yeah, I think it's related. Just listen. So I saw something on social media recently. There's this influencer, this family influencer who put out a very beautiful, very cute picture of her family. So she, her husband, and her two children. Beautiful, gorgeous family. And somebody responded and said, oh, I am so sure this man is not the father of these kids. He's probably impotent. And I'm like, and I remember looking at that comment and thinking, what what the actual, like, how can this come out of somebody? But listen, the Bible wasn't wrong when it said, out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth will speak. Something needs to be abundant in you, and before it comes out of your mouth. Anyone who has an abundance of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness will not spout or spill something like that out of their mouth or out of their fingers, because it's social media. For you to say something like that, your mind must be so full of bile. It must be so full of pain, bitterness, and wickedness. Now, before you begin to judge this person, say, oh, this person is a very bad person, and before you begin to write this commenter or this troll off, you need to realize that human beings have that capacity. We all have that capacity. It takes someone who constantly feeds themselves with the right thing to not pander to that extreme. Do you understand what I'm saying? So in essence, the point I'm making is that if you do not nip comparison and the trap of it in the bud, you will go to the negative extreme. So that's why comparison, we need to take it very seriously, especially in this day and age where we have social media and everybody's life is in your face. as you're scrolling, your mind is doing the social ranking. As you're scrolling, your mind is comparing. You see that your friend in uni or secondary school that probably wasn't the brightest in the class, or probably wasn't the smartest in the class, or probably wasn't the most popular, and that person suddenly looks like they have everything going on for them, and you, who has put in the work and who has done everything the right way, and you're just like, "Ah, why did my," and you know, your life doesn't seem as successful as what this person is posting, or what this person or how this person is supposedly living, right? There is a tendency that you begin to compare yourself to that person. And so the reason why we're talking about this is so that you can catch yourself before you fall into that trap, because it is a trap. It is a trap of the enemy. It keeps you in this loop, in this cycle, where you now continue, you now you begin to do things in a way that you begin to do things that are probably not relevant, or do things that are probably antithetical to how you ought to be living your life, because you just want to show that you are just as good, or you begin to feel bad about yourself, and then you just spiral into this place where, instead of working on yourself and moving forward and taking the steps that you need to take and focusing on your own journey, you just not do anything at all, because you're like, oh well. It's just like the parable of the talents, where the master gave people different numbers of talents, and the guy that had one was like, well, this guy is a very wicked guy. He gave this one 2, gave this one 3, gave this one 4, gave this one 5, and then he just gave me 1. Well, I might as well just sit down, just bury it one place and not do anything about it. That is a trap of comparison, because you are looking at another person's garden. You are so focused on another person's garden that you don't water your own. And what happens? You're looking at somebody water their own garden. The person's garden is becoming lush, greener, looking much more fertile. And yours, because you're just so focused on somebody else's business, you neglect yours. And yours begins to wither and suffer and die. Right? So it's a trap, because it takes your mind away from what really matters. You won't believe that I have actually been talking for the past 20 minutes. I just realized that my microphone wasn't working. The things people go through. Like, yeah, no, I think it works now. So I don't even remember everything I said, but I'll try. Anyway, so yeah, comparison distracts you from your purpose, distracts you from distracts you from what is actually working in your life, because you're constantly fixated on what the other person is doing, what the other man is doing, what the other woman is doing. I think that it's yeah, it just steals your joy, to be honest. Just takes away from you. I mean, think about it. Like, everyone is on a different journey. We're all on a different journey. It's just like your body parts, right? Just imagine if the hand was jealous of the legs, and the hand was like, oh, the leg can do this, the leg can do that. I also want to do everything that the leg can do. But the hand has its own role, it has its own function, right? And so does the leg, and so do your legs, right? And even the toes, as small as they are, they play a pivotal role in your balance, right? Just if something happened to one of your toes, you would be surprised how your entire body will just be in a complete disarray. So, in the same way, we each all have a role and a purpose for which God put us in this world. When you are constantly focused on what God is doing for the other person, you will not see what He is doing in your own life. So, yeah, comparison is just one of those things that takes you, that derails you, because you just you just don't pay attention to all of the good things that are happening in your life, and it doesn't even give you that chance to work on the things that you should actually be working on in your life. And I know, especially in this age of social media, it's very hard to tell people to stop comparing. And a lot of times that's what we do. We just say, oh, stop comparing yourself to this person, stop comparing yourself to that person. But you need to realize that one of the ways that you can nip it in the bud, or one of the ways that you can catch yourself when you find yourself falling into this trap of comparison, is reflecting on it. You need to reflect. And one of the things that reflection does for you is that it helps you to identify patterns, right? And reflection can be done in several ways. You can reflect by journaling, you can reflect by recording an audio of your thoughts and your feelings. You can reflect by just thinking about your thoughts, or thinking about certain situations or certain circumstances that you find yourself in. But when you reflect, you identify patterns, right? For a lot of people, some people might find themselves falling into the trap of comparison more than others. A lot of times it has to do with your nurturing, it has to do with your socialization process, it has to do with the kind of environment in which you were raised, right? So some people, if you were raised in an environment where there was a lot of love, acceptance, you weren't extreme, or you weren't overly criticized for mistakes. You know, mistakes were treated as a part of life, and you just weren't raised in a highly critical environment, you might not find yourself falling into the trap of comparison as often as someone who may have been raised in a highly critical environment, in an environment where love was earned, in an environment where their affection was based on performance, where you have to earn love, right? Or in an environment that was highly dysfunctional, or in an environment where there was a lot of competition, where there was a lot of comparison. Maybe you were constantly compared to a cousin or a brother or a neighbor or a sister, or just one random person in your class, right? Or you were surrounded by adults who were constantly competing with other adults in their lives. So if you were raised in that kind of environment, there's a very high chance that you will find yourself constantly comparing, or constantly falling into the cycle of negative comparison. And I dare say that a lot of African women, a lot of women who were raised in an African society, might might find themselves in this cycle of comparison often, because of the highly patriarchal society, and because of the way a lot of women were raised. A lot of African women were raised to see other women as a competition. And I'll talk about this in detail in another video. I'm going to delve into this because we're going to talk about it. These conversations need to be had. And I don't say this to judge. These are just observations, that things that I have noticed in my life, and things that I have noticed in society, especially as an African woman. So I think we need to draw some awareness to some of these things that we do, so that we can do better. It's not to castigate anyone or to make anyone feel judged, but just so that we know, and just so that we can correct accordingly. But that's something that I'll delve into in more detail in a subsequent video. But the point I'm making is that if you were raised in a highly patriarchal society as a woman, there's a very high chance that you will fall into this trap of comparison very often, because the African society raises women to see other women as a competition. You're made to feel like another woman having something means that you cannot have it. You're raised with a scarcity mindset, whereby you feel as though the fact that another woman is more beautiful means that you are less beautiful. So somebody having something means that you have been robbed, right? So somebody being better at something means that you lack in some way. It feels that feeling of inadequacy that has kind of been built into the way a lot of African girls were raised. So yeah, so when you understand your socialization, you understand the environment in which you were raised, it helps you identify those patterns. Because trust me, we can just say, oh, stop comparing yourself to somebody else, oh, stop, comparison is wrong, stop, oh, stop, but people don't just stop. You need to know where and how to stop. And it always starts here, in your mind, in your head. When that mindset shifts happens, that is when change can actually happen. It always starts here. When you become aware of the beliefs that have been molded into you, or the mindset that you have, that has become your default, you then begin to learn how to unravel and heal all those negative things inside of you that make you susceptible to constant negative comparison, right? So, yeah, it starts in your mind, it starts in learning and building your self worth. Because a lot of times, the reason why we constantly compare ourselves to other people is because we do not feel enough in ourselves, right? We are fixated on somebody else's journey because we do not feel like our journey is enough. We do not feel we do not feel confident in what we are building. We do not feel confident in where we are going. And so so somebody else's success feels like failure, feels or kind of makes it look like we are failing, right? So, but when you understand that another person's success doesn't affect yours, we all succeed in different ways, and success means different things to different people. When you are rock solid in your worth as a person, when you are focused on where you are going, when you understand that it is your lane, your story, your journey, when you understand that God's plans for you are specifically tailored to you, another person's success doesn't mean that you have failed, because you understand that your role in this world is different. It's just like Moses, right? It will interest you to know that Moses, the same Moses whose entire ministry was about liberation and setting the Israelites free from captivity, the same Moses whose rod God used to part the Red Sea and the Israelites walked on dry ground, he had two sons. Yeah, I think he had two sons. But the two sons did not do, in quotes, great and mighty, as great things or as mighty things as Moses himself. In fact, the priesthood came from the lineage of Aaron, Moses' brother, right? And somehow, as human beings, we would automatically have thought that, oh, because Moses was great, his sons will follow in that path of greatness. But God doesn't work like that. God doesn't work like that. God's purpose and his plans are perfect, but they are not always in alignment with what man expects. They are not always in tandem with the expectations of man, because God is God and humans are humans. God doesn't think like humans. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are far greater than ours. He doesn't operate according to our expectations, right? Does it mean that Moses' sons were not relevant? They were relevant. They had their own purpose. God had a different purpose for them. He used them in a different way, right? So what I'm trying to say is that everybody's journey is different. Like, even still on the story of Moses, if you think about, when the Israelites started having issues and Moses had to resolve disputes and things like that, it was Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, who gave him the idea of delegation. You see, and Jethro's idea was ingenious. Like, it was like, oh wow, this, it was genius. Like, Moses did not even think of it. The same Moses who is the liberator, right? Jethro had his own purpose, right? His own life, his own lane, his own journey. So in the same way, God works with us in different ways. So yeah, it's important to understand this. Once you understand this, it becomes easier to recognize when you're beginning to fall into that trap of comparison. Another thing that I would say you can do to curtail this negative comparison is taking it as feedback. Now, for me, when I find myself feeling some kind of way or constantly comparing myself to people, it exposes something to me. For me, it's a way that I realize it's a way of me identifying that I have been spending too much time on things I should not be spending too much time on. So for me, it's feedback that you have been spending too much time on certain types of content. You have been spending too much time on spending too much time minding another person's business instead of minding your own. You have been spending too much time watching another person's water their own grass instead of watering your own. For me, it is an indication that I have not spent as much time as I ought to with God. That is for me personally. When I find myself constantly comparing in that space where I just realize that every time I'm comparing myself to somebody or someone in some kind of way, it signals to me that you need to go and spend time with God. You need to fill up your cup. You need to fill up your cup. You are your mind is beginning to get full of something that is not of God, right? And it's also an indication of me, it's an indication to me that I need to go and lay that feeling down to God. So for me, it's a kind of spiritual for me, it's a kind of spiritual awareness for me, but for you, it could be something else, right? But generally, when you find yourself in that space where you're constantly comparing, it should be feedback to you that you are focusing on things that do not matter. So go take the time, maybe take some time off social media. So some people, that is what it is. It is feedback for you to take some time off the streets of the internet and go and fill your cup. Go and read a book. Go and do that assignment. Go and focus on your focus. Go and build your life, right? So yeah, that's one of the ways that you can manage comparison. Take it as feedback. It help understand your patterns. Like for me also personally, I know the kind of people that I have a high tendency to compare myself to. I know the kinds of things that I'm drawn to. I know the kinds of people that I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to audacious, bold, confident women. I'm drawn to women who carry themselves with grace, charisma, class, sophistication. I am drawn to brilliance. I'm drawn to women who are just, who just possess this fiery passion for purpose and for God. I am drawn to women who are just going for what they want, right? Women who are eloquent, women who are articulate, and who do not apologize for being bold, who do not apologize for being true to themselves. I'm drawn to women who are very conscious and conscious of the power and the light that they carry on their inside. You can feel the passion, right? You can feel it. So you know that I'm not joking here. So those are the kind of women that I'm drawn to. So I have a high tendency to be drawn to women like that, women who are intelligent, right? So I know that if I'm not careful, I might find myself constantly comparing myself to these women. So, because I have identified that as a pattern, once I spot it, I know how to flip it. And that's my next point. One of the ways that you can deal with comparison, negative comparison, is to flip it. That's the positive way to compare. When you realize that, oh, if someone has something that I don't have, or if someone is going for something or has achieved something that I'm trying to achieve, they have information that I don't have. They know something that I don't know. So flip comparison into inspiration, admiration, knowledge. There was a time I heard a particular lady speaking, and I felt some kind of way where a part of me wanted to start feeling like, what's wrong with her? Why is she talking like that? But I caught myself. You see, that awareness, important. So I caught myself and I was like, this is not, this is not right. Like immediately I was like, I like the way she speaks. Again, remember I said I'm drawn to women who are eloquent. I love it. So I was like, I like the way she speaks. Who is she? And then I went to look her up and I started following her on social media. That is how I deal with my heart. That is for me, right? I started following her. I flipped it into admiration. I flipped it into inspiration because I'm like, she has something that I want. That means she knows something that I don't know. I want to find out. I want to find out what she knows. What can I learn? Oh, are you getting this? A lot of times we are comparing and competing because one of the offshoots of comparison is competition. When you start comparing, you start getting jealous and you start competing. If this person buys A, you will go and buy A raised to power 2. If this person posts X, you will go and post X raised to power 50. You will start competing with somebody you should be learning from. A lot of times we rob ourselves of amazing relationships, transformational relationships, mentorships, because we are competing with people we should be learning from. That lady I was talking to you about, I just mentioned, I have learned so much just by following her. Just imagine I had said, this one, why is she doing like this? Why is she doing like that? Like there are so many things I probably wouldn't have learned from her, right? But when you open your heart out, and when you flip comparison and you open your heart up and you see it as an opportunity to learn from someone, and you turn it into inspiration and admiration, what you're telling the universe is that I too welcome, I also welcome this kind of opportunity. You know, I celebrate this woman. I honor her grace. I honor what God is doing through her. And I'm opening myself up as a channel through which God can also do something similar or something even greater. Right? So yeah, flipping it, turning it into inspiration, turning it into admiration is one of the best ways that you can deal with comparison. Trust me, it is tried, tested, trusted by me. By yours faithfully, yours sincerely. But yeah, trust me. It's one of the things that I do. It's one of the ways that I personally deal with comparison. Flip it. Like flip it immediately, and you'll be surprised just how much that negative feeling is going to turn into something positive. Okay, this is still good, so we continue. I have to keep checking this microphone because I don't want what happened. Like I talked for 20, almost 30 minutes, and this stuff it wasn't recording the voice. I haven't forgotten most of the things I said, but we move. Anyway, so another way that you can deal with comparison, and I'm wrapping this up soon. Another way you can deal with comparison is by celebrating others. It's also the same as flipping it into admiration and inspiration, but celebrating others. My pastor always says, if God is blessing your neighbor, it means that he's in your neighborhood. You cannot understand that you cannot be better than everybody, right? Like, just accept that fact forever. You cannot be the best in the world. Where you're starting, that's where somebody where your skill or your money or whatever it is ending. That's where another person's own is starting. You have to be content. And look, contentment. Oh God, contentment is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Understanding that your lane is your lane. I wish you could just see the passion, like how much I want you to understand what I'm saying. Your journey is your journey. Your lane is your lane. Your lane is your lane. Water your own grass. Be content. Contentment doesn't mean complacence. It doesn't mean not wanting better for yourself. It doesn't mean not desiring better, right? But being content helps you stay grounded. It helps you understand that your worth doesn't come from another person's success. It makes you understand that another person's success doesn't mean make you a failure. It makes you feel adequate. It makes you feel adequate in and of yourself, right? So when you are content, it's easy to celebrate other people. When you're content, it's easy to rejoice with other people. So one of the ways to deal with comparison is to celebrate other people. There was one time I was scrolling through social media, and there was this lady who was talking about the fact that just telling the story of how her business took off and how her life has changed and how she's just grateful, right? And I just put there in the comments, this is so amazing. I'm so happy for you, right? And it's because I realized that celebrating people helps you to deal with your heart. That is in that split second where you feel that comparison or that jealousy or that envy rising up. If in that split second you can say, wow, congratulations, it will, that feeling will fade away. It will dissolve. It will dissolve because you're not going to let it take root in your life. You're not going to let it rise up in you. You're not going to let that comparison rise up in you because you are dealing with it immediately on the spot. Just celebrate people. Be happy for people. If God is blessing your neighbor, He's in your neighborhood, right? So yeah, celebrate other people. Be content. Celebrate other people. Be content. Choose joy, right? Work on your own lane, on your own journey. It's just like when you're driving. If you're driving and you're constantly looking to the side, looking at what other people are doing on their own lanes, you're going to crash badly. You're going to crash badly. So water your own grass. Water your own grass and understand that it is God who is in you. God is working His purpose through you. There is a reason why He created you. He has a purpose that is specifically tailored to you. People who are content do not have the time to constantly look at what other people are doing. People who are focused on their journey do not have the time to look at what other people are doing because they understand that they are on their own journey. They understand that it's that they understand that it is their journey, it is their story, it is their lane, right? Comparison is going to steal your joy. Comparison is going to steal your joy. It's going to crush your self-esteem. Nip it in the bud. As much as you can, with God helping you, try as much as possible to deal with it using all of these or some of these strategies that I have shared in the course of this episode. All right, but let me know in the comments, what do you think? How have you been able to deal with comparison in your own way? What are some of the things that comparison, what have you learned by comparing yourself to others? I know people always say, look, stop comparing to yourself to others. You don't know what they are going through. And that is true. But I always like to think like they might not even be going through anything. The fact that people are posting or sharing the good side or the good parts of their life doesn't mean that the rest of the part is bad, right? But it doesn't take anything away from you, right? It doesn't, you are not inadequate. God is in your story. God is writing your story. Let Him write it. Let Him write it. Just focus on your goal. Focus on where you're going. Focus on your own journey. Focus on your own lane. And let God do what He needs to do. Understand that you are also part of God's grand purpose and you have a role to play. If you're constantly thinking about or comparing yourself to what other people are doing in their own lanes, you will not have the time to do what you're supposed to do. You will not have the time to play your own role, or you might find yourself just moving in a way that is completely opposite to what God has intended for you to do. Or let's work on being content. Let's work on focusing on our own journey. It is your lane, it is your story, it is your journey. Okay, let me know what you think in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify. Otherwise, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, please do well and subscribe to the channel. Share this with your friends, your sisters, your brothers, even this is specifically for the girls, but yeah, share it to your brothers if you think they'll learn from it. Leave me your comments. I'll see you again in my next episode. Chat soon. Take care.